Good evening, good evening, good evening. I'm just getting around to what we need to do. So let's do our intro. Welcome to iPen Podcast, Interviews and Conversations. Here we bring entrepreneurs and their business to their audience and communities as well as ours. We welcome and connect with them to share who they are and what they do. Authors, entrepreneurs, we extend the invitation to promote your business here on our podcast and in iPen Magazine. Your article, your story, your promotions, how you can connect with others, a new audience, a quarterly magazine presented online for all to view and subscribe to. For articles, ads, and subscriptions, please contact ipendesigns@gmail.com. For your viewing, you can see past articles, past interviews on www.nanettembuchan.com. Welcome to the show. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Things seem a little haywire because they are a little haywire. We are still waiting for our guests to arrive. So you guys will have an opportunity, if you like, to ask questions in the comments, as well as me and Felice just discussing some top issues that are going on and future things that we might want to see, because we have not heard from our guests as of yet. So we don't know what's going on. People are all over the country. We don't know if they're stuck in traffic. We don't know if they're stuck in weather conditions, but he is not from the East Coast. He is in Texas. So in Texas, it is raining. So we know that they do have a lot of rain out there. So we want to make sure that he's okay. We hope he's okay. But in the meantime, I'm going to bring to the stage my partner in crime because she handles all of that kind of stuff. So maybe she can tell us something that we don't know. So Felice, come on, come on, come on. Tell me, tell me, tell me. How are you, my dear?
I am wonderful. Even though it has been raining, I don't know why we're having a little technical difficulties with the computers, but it seems to happen when it rains. But no worries, we're still going to be here. And Nanette, you know what? I just had a brilliant idea.
Okay.
My brilliant idea is that
Yeah.
you need to be our featured person today.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, your goodness and the rest of our goodness.
Oh, oh my goodness. Oh, I well,
And
let's see
and
how let's see how that goes.
okay,
Let's
well,
see
and
how it
then
goes.
also as we were talking pre-show, we need to talk about your event a little bit.
Yeah, we can do that. We
Yeah,
can
let's
talk
do
about
that.
that. I don't know how to maneuver everything, as you guys well know that sometimes when we do these media things, we have to know immediately what to do. So just bear with us as we go through this and we go through the logistics of it. But we're going to try to give you the best show ever, as we usually do. And we
Mm-hmm.
ask you to put in your comments, put in your questions and everything, and ride along with us. Hey, this is a ride along. We don't know where we're going, but we're gonna get there. So
Yeah,
let's do this. Let's do this ride along. So we at this point, let's talk about some of the typical things. Every time we have the show, we have an intro that tells you who we are, what we do, why we do it. So what we want our audience to know more than anything else is we try to share information from the community. It does not matter that you just started your business. It does not matter that you're looking to partner with someone or you're looking for information. It doesn't matter if you have an idea for a topic of a show, but you really don't have a show, but you want to talk about a certain topic. We invite everyone. We're not limited to, well, we only talk to these type of entrepreneurs, or we only deal with this type of business, or we only bring in these type people. We don't want you to feel that you're being neglected at all. So if you decide to come on the show, ask your questions, um, ask us what we think. We can have just a general conversation, because the
yeah.
general conversation sometimes sparks,
Mm-hmm.
brilliant ideas. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how Felice and I got together with this idea, just having a conversation,
Yeah,
so don't hold back if you think that you see something that you want to express and it's not really what the mainstream is doing. I mean, if we think about it, a couple of years ago there was no TikTok. If you go
mm-hmm.
back longer, there was no, LinkedIn, or no Facebook, or any of the social media sites. There was no jobs, certain jobs that are now created. We didn't have coaches, life coaches. We got so many life coaches now. You wonder, well, whose life is straight or not straight with all the life coaches that we have.
Yeah.
So do not think that your idea cannot be put on a podcast and
Mm-hmm.
talked about. Let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about it. Put it out there.
Yeah,
You never know who might be watching that might say, "Hey, I'll back that. I'll back that idea." So I want you to, you know, understand that
mm-hmm.
thoughts create, things that can be phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's,
It,
I want to be inspiring to you, but I want you to understand the reason for this inspiration.
yeah. And then that I would like to just piggyback on what you said and kind of go back and say to a person, especially a person that may just be getting started in their business, in their entrepreneurial
Mm-hmm.
journey or whatever, even if it's not an entrepreneurial journey, maybe it is a community service journey if you want. And you're at the beginning. I think we need you. We need you on this podcast. The world needs you because a lot of times, as much as I love a success story, you are far removed from your beginnings, and so many people need
Mm-hmm.
to know that they're not alone in starting something. But they might be
Mm-hmm.
afraid and just be hesitant, or just know that, hey, I need some encouragement, I need some motivation, I need to know that there are others out there that are starting things, and it may not be the exact same thing, but the situations are similar, and you can find inspiration for that. So I would like to, yes, welcome the startups,
Right.
welcome to
Welcome to
know,
startups.
where'd you get the idea and what have you done thus
Mm-hmm.
far? Because again,
Mm-hmm.
it is about the start. In the
Right.
beginning, it's
Right.
about the start.
And
You just gotta start in order to get to where you're going. You gotta start. And so
exactly.
I would
Exactly.
encourage those that are listening that may have a fantastical idea. that hasn't gotten its legs yet, but maybe are crawling to come, because we want to celebrate that as well. We need to celebrate the starts.
And I think the thing about it is everybody looks towards the person that is doing over the top.
Mm-hmm.
And they forget that in order for you to be over the top, you
Mm-hmm.
got to start at the bottom of the hill.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You
Yeah,
can't get to
that's
the
true.
top of the hill until
You don't start at the top.
you don't start at the top. You
You don't
start at the
start at the
bottom.
top. Yeah, there's
You
a
start at the
foundation
bottom.
down there.
So if you're
Mm-hmm.
going to climb the hill, and sometimes climbing that hill means you're going to slide back a couple of steps. Sometimes climbing the hill means it's going to get, tiresome. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you have to stop in the middle of the climb. So we
Mm-hmm.
want to talk to you because there's people that we've dealt with, even on the
Mm-hmm.
show, that have stopped and started again, that have
Yeah.
had no assistance in finances and no assistance in the business plan.
Mm-hmm.
I remember talking to someone just a couple of weeks ago, and I was telling them, okay, I got this 501c now.
Mm-hmm.
What do I do? Because the rules for the 501c are
Mm-hmm.
entirely different than the rules for the regular business. You can't
Yeah.
do the same thing in both businesses. You
Mm-hmm.
can have the same goals, but
Yeah.
one is for profit and one you can't have that where you making money and sitting on it.
Well,
You
yeah, not on the sitting on the part. It's
Yeah,
truly
you
the
can't sit
business
on it.
thing.
You got to be
It's
able
not
to
just
say
the,
where that money is
yeah.
going and how that
Mm-hmm.
money is going to be
Mm-hmm.
utilized, and it has to follow into
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing. It can't
But
be just free
right.
flowing money, you
Well,
know.
don't confuse that with it not being allowed to be profitable, because
Exactly.
that is real.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And you still have
nonprofit should
right.
always be profitable,
Profitable.
but
Yes.
again, you have
Yes.
to handle the money
But
a
you have to
lot
handle it a
differently.
different way. You have
Yeah,
to have it,
yeah,
and it takes different paperwork.
yeah.
It's not that you just added the numbers
Hmm.
501c at the end of
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I think that people look at it and say that the hustle that
Hmm.
they have, when you're getting
Hmm.
ready to turn that hustle
Hmm.
into a business, it's
Yeah,
time for you to look into what the business needs.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
what are you now doing?
Hmm.
Uh, and when I say hustle, the IRS calls it hobby.
Yeah, yeah,
They don't call it a
right.
hustle. They
Yeah,
say you have a hobby, you
yeah.
really don't have a business.
Hmm.
So when you think about your hobby, that you say, well, I'm gonna turn it over to a business.
Hmm.
Now you have to fit the business format one
Yeah,
way or another. So
yeah.
we want you to come on. We want the startups to come on
Absolutely.
and tell us what you're doing. Tell us what you think you're going to be able to do with your visions and your goals and your dreams. And that's what we're about here.
Yeah.
So it's not just about people that have already made it. We want
Hmm.
to talk to those that are climbing and reaching out. And we want to talk to some people in the community too.
Yeah,
We want to talk to
absolutely.
some people that have community organizations that maybe are not business people. They're just going out and helping, and they help workers, and they help kids
Hmm.
after school, and they help parents that are struggling, and babysitting the kids. And
Hmm.
we want to talk to some of them too. We also want to talk to some of the youth, because there's
Hmm.
a lot of
I
youth
love
that
that.
have their own businesses, that
Hmm.
are developing their businesses
Hmm.
early.
Yeah.
That I know a young lady, and I have to reach out to her.
Hmm.
Her son has a lemonade stand.
Oh,
And
nice.
he does lemonade vending, and
Mhm.
I think he's 6, but he loves lemonade, and
Wow.
that's why he started it. He loves
Uh-huh.
lemonade, so
I
he
love
makes
it.
different flavors and everything.
Hmm.
And I met him at an event, and
Hmm.
he's 6, and he makes lemonade.
You know,
So
I must have a missing gene in my DNA, because I love it lemonade too, but never did I think
never
that was
did you think about it. And the thing about it was I actually thought, okay, he likes lemonade. So,
Mhm.
mom just decided that he would be the face
Mhm.
on this lemonade. But
Yeah.
he likes it so much he was telling people to try it.
Oh,
And
wow, look
that's
at
how she
that.
said he's learned how to make it. He's
Mhm.
and he actually was asking people to try it. So
Nice.
now he does it with different flavors.
Uh-huh.
So, he's experimenting. So I
Yeah.
would love to have him on. I think he's
Mhm.
about 6 now.
Mhm. That'd
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you for
should
about
do that.
six.
Now, I want anyone that has like a connection. Doesn't have to be a restaurant, or it could be a little pop up or a food truck, but connection to king crab legs. Please come.
Mm,
Please come
mm.
because I need.
Well, you don't need them to come to the show. You need them to just connect.
Well, you know,
And you know what? You know what is
somebody
really
else might
different?
want to.
And what's really different as far as business is concerned,
Hmm.
when you go to different restaurants. Now
Hmm.
this I really like because I used to follow that show where they used to go to the different restaurants and show how the business was going and
Hmm.
everything.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of seeing how different places have different ways of making things
Hmm.
because I lost out on like the New York pizza.
Yeah.
They
Hmm.
make pizza here, but it
Yeah.
ain't New York
Right.
pizza.
Right. Right.
You know
Right.
what I mean? Going to like you said, seafood.
Hmm.
I went to Baltimore Harbor. Baltimore Harbor seafood is different entirely than
Yeah.
anywhere else I've been. You
Hmm.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So even like the recipes and everything
Hmm.
else that everybody has, we
Hmm.
have to understand that if you go to New Orleans, there's certain
Hmm.
things you're going to get there that are different. And
Hmm.
I know that our viewers and everybody knows this, you know,
Hmm.
that we have different tastes, different atmosphere, different things that
Hmm.
cities are known for, and
Hmm.
different things like Philly is known for the Philly cheesesteak, you
Yeah.
know. So you got different ways of making different things.
Hmm.
But I just wonder, you know, when people migrate,
Hmm.
do they take that with them?
Mm.
You
Yeah,
know?
to some extent, like the little boy. I mean, he's liking lemonade, and then he's telling people to try it. You know, people like I know a young man. He's from Jamaica, and you know he immigrated, of course, here, and then now he makes Jamaican food because he couldn't find the food that he grew up
Right,
with, right?
right,
So
right.
that
Well, yeah, it
so
makes
maybe
it
we
makes
need
a
to take this
difference.
show on the road and
Yes,
start going to.
yes. Going to the different restaurants and
Yeah,
checking it
yeah.
out.
And
And,
have a special guest
yeah,
take us to their favorite restaurant.
exactly.
Yes,
Because the
I
thing
love
is,
it.
it's I something that's funny that we're talking about the food. The
Mhm,
Sabrett hot dog. Do they have that in Texas?
mhm. No.
Okay, it's the famous hot dog that they used to have at different baseball games and on New York streets and
Mhm,
different places. And I would literally sometimes on Fridays or Saturdays take my kids to New York to
mhm.
get a hot dog,
Yeah, I've
to
had the
get
Nathan's, but this is different.
it's called Sabrett's. It's a
The
beef
bread,
hot
I
dog.
haven't heard of
It's a
it.
beef hot dog, and
Uh-huh.
it's a very good hot dog.
Yeah.
But it's made on the little push cart trucks
Uh-huh.
with the
Yeah.
yellow and blue
Mhm.
umbrella and everything.
Yeah.
And my kids would love it. It was like an outing for them.
Mhm.
We ride from New Jersey on the
Yeah.
train, go to New York, get some
Mhm.
hot dogs, get some the peanuts on the street. We get
Yeah.
different, you know, different things.
Mhm.
Well, down here, and I'm in
Mhm.
North Carolina,
Mhm.
so you know, I'm not looking for the New York hot dog. I know that, like you said, I could get a Nathan's hot dog. As a matter of
Yeah.
fact, I can get one and make it at home. You know, it's
Yeah.
not like
Yeah.
that
Yeah. It's not the
experience.
same though. Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, it's not the same experience.
Mhm.
But all of a sudden, I see this blue and yellow umbrella.
Mhm.
Guess where it was?
Good.
At Lowe's.
What?
The
Okay, well,
lady,
hey, I
the
ain't mad
lady,
at Lowe's. It
the
probably somebody,
lady.
the manager of Lowe's came from New York.
Listen, the lady and her husband
Uh-huh.
do Lowe's hot dogs
Mm.
all through the week, not only
Uh-huh.
for the workers that are at Lowe's, but
Uh-huh.
for the people that come into the
Yeah.
area or whatever. We
Uh-huh.
go there every now and then, like it's a date, and go
Yeah.
get two hot dogs. But
I love it.
It's the
Yeah.
New York hot dog. So that's
Uh-huh.
what I was thinking when I said, yeah, you know, you would think that they would bring crab legs to you somewhere down there. Somebody would have
Yeah,
crab
but
legs
I
that
need the key. Well, I mean, there's somebody got them. I just don't have the connection to the people.
to the big ones, to the big ones. Yes, yes, yes.
So yeah, anybody that
And
that
you love to travel.
I do.
I mean, you like that
do.
far
I
travel.
I
You
do.
you like to travel. My
Yes,
son
please.
went to Alaska to
Uh-huh.
do a comedy show,
Mhm.
and he was showing me the
Mhm.
crab legs
Yes.
in Alaska, and I was like, I am not going all the way to Alaska.
Why not,
just to get
Nanette?
a
Why
crab,
not?
not
That's
just
so
to get a crab
Yes,
leg.
yes, 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 Nanette. Yes, 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 Nanette. Yes,
But
yes,
yeah,
yes.
so different places have
Mm-hmm,
their thing. But
mm-hmm,
we, again, talking about businesses,
mm-hmm.
that's a startup. People
Yeah.
have, I have not, I mean, I moved from Jersey, so,
Mm-hmm,
it's a little different. And we did have food truck festivals, but
mm-hmm,
we didn't have food trucks as abundantly
mm-hmm.
as they are here.
Oh
Like
yeah. In
you
Texas, it's big too.
yeah, you get
It's
the food
huge.
truck festivals, you get the
Mm-hmm,
food truck this, and then all day long you can ride up and down and see the food trucks and get your
mm-hmm.
food or whatever. We have one truck that we know we go to for this and one truck we know we
Mm-hmm.
go to for that.
Yeah,
So it makes a difference, but it's a business.
yeah.
It's a business.
True, it
And
is.
and the same thing, the same information that we ask of our people here is the
Mm-hmm,
same thing that we ask of, the person that's starting up that
mm-hmm.
says, hey, I want to quit my 9 to 5 and get that truck and get that business
Yeah,
going.
yeah,
It's something that's important.
yeah.
So I just think that yeah, we need to talk to
Mm-hmm,
the startups. We need
yeah.
to get some of them on and some of the community activists. I want to
Mm-hmm,
I try to stay away from politics and
yeah,
religion because there's so many different opinions and you
yeah.
don't want arguments and
Mm-hmm,
discorded feelings because somebody thinks that you think one way or another.
mm-hmm,
But I do believe that with the differences we can mesh certain things together
yeah.
and all benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
I think
because it's unfortunate with that. Because even if I have a different thought from you, I think I am mature enough to allow you your thought
mhm,
without
mhm,
imposing my thought over top of yours. You
mhm.
know,
Or
something like
creating a dissension
yeah,
between the fact that your thought may be just as good as my thought.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that
Possibly coexist.
where it
Mm-hmm,
gels pretty good is when it comes to business, when it
mm-hmm,
comes to people having visions and goals. I
mm-hmm,
think that we can clearly say that
mm-hmm.
everyone has a different vision and a different goal.
Yeah.
That and we understand that. And I think that that's a part of a necessity that
Mm-hmm,
we need to first come to the point of understanding that your dream may be the same dream. You may
yeah.
dream to climb that same hill, but I got a different way of climbing it, or I
Yeah.
got a
Yeah.
different way of dealing with the hill.
Mm-hmm,
So I think that this platform opens up the dream and vision mindset.
mm-hmm,
It's not so one channel to one thing, or you got to be this or that. You
mm-hmm,
know, there's a vast majority of things that you can do when it comes to business and everything else.
mm-hmm.
Um, One of the things that's close to my heart, as the audience may or may not pay too much attention to, is our healthcare situation. And I'm not even talking about certain illnesses or certain things like that, but I just, for some reason, it's becoming more prevalent to me
Mm-hmm,
that a lot of places made mistakes
mm-hmm.
closing down their mental facilities
Oh
and
yeah.
closing down their access to mental health,
Mm-hmm.
to helping the community as far as mental health is concerned.
Right.
A lot of our community issues and community um, disgruntled disruptions, if you want to call it that,
Yeah.
I believe come from the fact that a lot of people that have mental health issues are
Yeah.
not being helped.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. And the mistake, yes, is right. That's the right word. At first, I was like, "Well, the mistake is definitely not necessarily in the closing down, but in our community and society not recognizing how important it is."
yes,
And
and
then,
then not understanding that the weak. I think um, the idea that the weak are not inclusive,
mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
think is one of the things that has overwhelmed me.
Yeah.
I'd say in the last 10, 15 years that
Mm-hmm.
the weak, being that they may have a disability or they may have had trauma or they may
Mm-hmm.
have had an emotional imbalance or
Mm-hmm.
they may have been put into a situation where they're looked a certain way. I've been
Mm-hmm.
listening to a lot of you know, when they say history, you look at, okay, we all came here and we did
Mhm.
this and we did that. But when you look at the endpoint history of mental issues, we kind of neglected people that had mental problems years ago. You know,
Right.
it was like
Right.
more or less that,
Mhm.
okay, the family can't afford them to go to a big therapist or go anywhere. There's so many people that didn't even have therapy.
Right.
You know, they
And
never went to therapy. They never
yeah.
they never had medication that they took. They
Right.
never had a special class that they sat
Mhm.
in. They
Right.
never went to a therapist. So
Mhm.
we ignored it for so long.
Yeah. Yeah. And to the point of it, it's like even now it's becoming less so because it's becoming so prevalent, but we were always like, and then we stand up and say, no, I'm okay, nothing's wrong, everything's good,
Right,
because that's
right.
what we have to
But I
present.
think you're absolutely right. But I think we did that because we didn't want people to label us.
Yes, absolutely.
You know what I
And
mean? Because
yeah.
I can remember, and this is like a little bit off, but just think about this. Something major happens at your job.
Hmm.
Someone gets hurt.
Yeah.
Maybe someone, you know, there's a robbery. You work at a bank.
Hmm.
Maybe the night before there was a big fire two
Hmm.
doors down from you, and you're worried about your
Yeah.
home.
Hmm.
Um, the devastations that we've had, like even with the fires and the floods and
Hmm.
everything else. Now, think
Hmm.
about the worker who's a block over who has not had a chance to assess damage to their home, but they got to go to work.
Yes, absolutely.
The thing
Hmm.
is that what a lot of people don't understand is this wears on the mental.
Sure.
Well, if this is already a person that's already handicapped, or a
Hmm.
person that already has someone at home
Hmm.
that really doesn't function well under stress,
Yeah.
someone that has an emotional imbalance. Imagine
Hmm.
that person going to work,
Hmm.
and someone comes to them and says to them, because it was in your neighborhood,
Hmm.
are you really able to work today?
Hmm. Right.
That puts an extra stressor on them because now they're wondering, if I say the truth,
Yeah.
like you said, if I
Hmm.
tell someone
Right.
that I'm really not feeling well, or
Hmm.
that I'm really stressed out because this
Hmm.
happened, or
Hmm.
that I don't know how I'm going to handle the fact that me and my husband are getting a divorce and I don't know where we're going to live, or
Right.
any imbalance,
Hmm.
if I tell this support
Hmm.
at my job,
Hmm.
and they immediately tell me, well, I don't think you can function to the
Hmm.
highest that we want you to at the job.
Hmm. Yeah.
Well, then are you really going to answer them?
Right. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And and I. Oh, hold on. Let me see. Um, I think I got a message from our guest. Uh-uh. Yep, he did think it was 6:30. um. Okay, so time change. So sorry about that. So that message just came through. But let's continue with this topic, because one of
Is
the
he
things
coming through? Is he coming on?
I he said almost, and then I thought, and then I said hop on when you can, but he hasn't responded to that.
Okay.
So one of the things that, especially in our community, meaning the African American Black community, is that, well, let me start with this. Anymore, there that is really with under the label of PTSD,
Mm-hmm.
and before, PTSD was more isolated
Mm-hmm.
uh, to the soldiers from war and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. But unfortunately, that's a domino effect.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then in our society, with all these chemicals and all of this stuff
Yes,
that
all of
we're
the other things.
ingesting,
Right. Right.
that is like making it, really snowball. And that
Yes.
now so much there's so much mental issues
Mm-hmm.
that is happening, along with all of those stressors, along with, like the wildfires in California. each time it seems to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yes, and the
And
thing is, like I said, I think years ago, the
mhm,
closing of so many facilities, and for
mhm,
some reason, we seem to think that if one does it, it's a snowball effect and
mhm,
everybody's got to do it. So you get one facility closes and the other one goes,
mhm,
"Oh, you're closing? You're saving
mhm,
money? Well, I'm going to
mhm.
close. Oh,
Right.
you're closing, so I'm going to
Mhm.
go." And we don't think about the rebound effect. We don't
Right.
think about the workers that no longer have a job, the
Mhm.
families that no longer have the support,
Yeah.
the whatever it is, like you
Yeah.
said, it snowballs, and it
Yes.
snowballs into a new problem,
Mhm.
a new thing that we didn't think that we had to handle,
Right.
or a new way of
Mhm.
actually trying to get to it. So we actually have more of an issue. We
Mhm.
have more of an issue. And now, like I said, one of the key things that I saw while I was working was the fact that they would come to you from personnel
Mhm.
and literally say to you, well, with that problem, because they know it's a problem,
Yeah.
it's happened to all
Mhm.
the employees, it happened to
Mhm.
everybody. So
Yeah.
they're just asking employees, and they go, well, with that problem, do
Mhm.
you think you can really perform?
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
caught in the middle of, well, no,
Mhm.
I'm sick from the smoke from this
Right.
fire. I need to go home. But if I
Mhm.
go home, you're going to put me on a temporary don't
Mhm.
come to work list. And I
Yeah.
need my money because I
Right.
need, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I think that the pressures that we put on each other
Mhm.
in the midst of crisis,
Mhm.
or in the midst of confusion, or the
Mhm.
midst of just typical turmoil,
Yeah. Mhm.
telling someone that it's almost like the family that you call up and you go, hey, the lights went out in the school, come get your kids.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, wait a minute, I'm at work.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then you want to go to the boss and say, I got to go get my kids because the lights went out at school. And he goes, well, the lights are on here and
Yeah.
we're working.
Right.
So now
Okay.
the
Yeah.
mental stuff builds,
Mhm.
and it builds and it
Right.
builds. And of course,
Mhm.
now you're mad. And now you're thinking, if this is the way my boss is thinking, does he really value who I am?
Yeah.
Should I be at this job?
Yeah.
And it snowballs.
Yeah.
It snowballs. And
Mhm.
we have these mental pressures
Yes.
with nowhere to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And then
And
today I thought it was really funny because I said, everybody's a life coach. Everybody, everybody's everybody
and because our tonight's guest
is a life coach.
is
But
is
but but
and,
it's just
and, and a
funny.
very successful one. But my joke was going to be that used to be our mom and our dad, right?
Yes, yes. But the thing about it is, and I don't knock anybody's profession. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't knock the fact that they aren't life coaches,
Yeah.
but I just don't think it's enough to just have that.
Right.
I
Right.
don't think that it's
And
enough
there's
to
a
just have.
degree. There's different degrees of life
Right,
coaching,
right.
right?
It's
And
just like
so,
you stubbed your toe and you put a Band-Aid on it, and when you
yeah.
go back, they tell you, no, your toe wasn't stubbed, it was
Mhm.
broke.
Right. And
You needed the next level. You
right.
really, you
and
know?
and and we use that term life coach a little bit loose because a lot
Mhm,
of times it is more business coach, and we need to get away from that.
mhm,
My life is my business, or my business is my life,
mhm.
because again, life, when it's lived correctly, is more than just that business, because
And
even
mhm,
the Steve Jobs of this world, when he got cancer and was laying on his deathbed, was not like,
mhm,
I should have worked harder. It was like,
mhm.
I should have spent time with my
My
family
family
and
and lived.
experienced
Yeah,
life, right?
yeah.
So the life coach deal, you have to, when you are engaging with a life coach, really
It has to
understand, is that a
encompass
business
more.
coach, or is it really
Right,
someone who
right.
is going to help me live my life and not
Mhm.
grow my business, right?
And not only that, I always talk about balances. I
Mm-hmm.
always talk about the balance. I
Mm-hmm.
don't care how much you do well in business.
Mm-hmm.
Your mental, you may be top with the
Mm-hmm.
business plans and everything else to run your
Mm-hmm.
business, and your life could be in ruins at home.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Your emotional stability is at
Mm-hmm.
whack.
Yeah.
Your spiritual ability, your spirituality is at whack. You have
Mm-hmm.
no idea of connecting unless you're either in trouble
Mm-hmm.
or overly grateful. You're
Right.
not doing any praying in
Yeah.
between or meditating in between,
Yeah.
or understanding in between.
Mm-hmm.
You have one extreme or the other, and
Mm-hmm.
that's it.
Yeah.
And that's an imbalance. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times we have to think about the balance that we did. I spoke to someone today, ironically, and I was telling them and I've said it to you, the
Mm-hmm.
worst phone calls for me are the ones that call me up and automatically assume that I'm doing bad.
Yeah.
Well, okay, no, I'm fine. How are you?
Yeah.
Like, why are you under the assumption that because I have this overhead thing that's
Mm-hmm.
going on medically,
Yeah.
that I got to be in a bad spirit?
Yeah.
No, my spirit
Yeah.
is uplifting most of the
Mm-hmm.
time. Believe me,
Mm-hmm.
if you catch me in a bad spirit, it's because I don't feel well.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
mentally, I try to stay as
Mm-hmm.
positive as I
Yeah.
can,
Yeah.
because I know
Mm-hmm.
that that's the only thing that's going to keep my physical
Mm-hmm.
up.
Yeah.
I can, people say, oh my goodness, I worked out so hard, I can't walk. Well,
Mm-hmm.
mentally, you got to prepare yourself to put your gym stuff on
Yeah.
and get in your car and go home. You
Yeah.
got to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to understand that our mental capacity
Mm-hmm.
has to be so much more. And if it is so much more,
Mm-hmm.
why don't we work on mental issues
Yeah. Yeah.
where we actually embrace them instead
Mm-hmm.
of disgrace them
Yeah.
by saying, people with mental problems or people
Mm-hmm.
with other problems are really, lower than
Mm-hmm.
someone else,
Yeah.
because there are people that have had mental problems or physical problems
Mm-hmm.
that have excelled
Yeah.
and done, marvelous things. They've contributed marvelous things to, society,
Yeah.
and would we say that to someone who couldn't hear or someone who couldn't see or someone,
Yeah.
those are physical things. Well, the
Mm-hmm.
mental is a part of that too.
Yeah.
You could be
Mm-hmm.
autistic and be number one in the class.
Mm-hmm.
You could be
And,
just
and
as astute.
right. So there's seems to be a big issue not only with the awareness of mental illness. It's like even for me right now, I'm seeking a therapist, but it's like it feels like that profession is overwhelmed by the amount
Mhm,
of people that are needed, need
mhm,
those services, right? And then then you run into the affordability of it,
mhm,
and but when you think about it, nothing is your mental health is priceless. So
mhm,
so you have to there is that those what I want to say, hurdles or obstacles to overcome, even if you are, or you get to the point where it's like, look, I've got to find someone. So, there's other things, of course, that will aid in your mental wellness. Um, for me, like I was just thinking as you were talking, I'm like, okay, so right now I have 4 different prayer calls that I'm on.
right, right.
Four.
Mhm,
Four. And those are things that help, that aid in, you my one thing just joined. Okay, so
yeah,
I'm
I
looking
don't
for.
see him on the frame. That's why I
Okay.
haven't brought him up. He's not center framed.
Um.
And again, audience, our guest is in a different time zone, so obviously there's a difference of coming on. So we're going to try to pull him on for at least a half an hour. If we can
Mhm,
get at least a half an hour in, I don't know if they'll cut us off, but we're going to come in at least
mhm.
and give him as much time as we can. um
But and so those are there are things that we as the person going through that, I know it's difficult to kind of look up and see the sunshine, but that's what we need to keep doing, is finding those things that like bring us joy to balance out the strife and the grief and the, things that we're trying to overcome, because when I mean, I think when it's all said and done, we, the individual, is responsible for our health.
And not only that, the other thing that I think dealing with the mental illness thing too is that we have to um, teach our children
Mm-hmm.
as well as our adults
Yeah.
how to how to if I add you to the screen.
Yay.
Yeah, but he's not there.
Uh-uh.
He's not there. That's what I
Uh-uh.
was trying to tell him. I
Mm.
can't see him. So I don't know if it's on his end with his camera or what it
Yeah.
is.
Okay.
The thing about it is that we try to mask what we think is different or odd from our
Sure.
kids
Mm-hmm.
instead of embracing it. When we were younger, I could remember, I don't know what his mental thing was, because like I said, I was a kid too.
Yeah.
But when there was time to pick a team, he was on a team. We
Uh-huh.
added him to a team.
Yeah.
And when he ran the wrong way, we would
Mm-hmm.
run with him,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
steer him the right way and
Mm-hmm.
tell him he could not do certain things like, oh, you struck out, it's not your
Yeah.
turn. And when he would throw a tantrum or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, saying it was I didn't miss, it was my turn.
Yeah.
Somebody would talk to him while the rest of us would continue to play.
Uh-huh.
We were more
Yeah.
inclusive.
Well, that's community, Nanette, and we've gone away from that because we don't send our children out to play in the streets anymore.
Right, right.
So that part is lost, and so everybody is individualized, and so that, and unfortunately, because most children only see each other at school anymore, and
Mm-hmm.
school has become such, well, how school has that, again, the if you take the time to address the behaviors of each individual, and now most of them have become, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of them, the numbers have increased of disruptive behavior in the classroom, that the
Mm-hmm.
ones that are capable of self-regulating and learning the lesson and staying focused and being on task, they lose out because of the teacher's time having to be taken to address these other things. So,
And you're absolutely right. The thing is that it's like I said, we used to have it where they would separate the kids and the learning of the
mhm,
children. Of
mhm,
course, you can't put them in a class that mm, I think that you can't fix the wrong
yeah,
when it's
mhm,
a big environment.
yeah,
Yes, you
mhm,
have to keep them safe, you have to keep them separate.
mhm,
um you can't do that.
yeah,
Ah, there he is.
yeah.
Okay, wait a minute, now what the heck happened to mine? There he is. All right.
Hey, how are you?
Yay!
All right, so
Awesome.
let me just back up a bit and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and
maybe take that
try
Betty
to
down.
Yeah,
let me conclude what we were doing so
Mhm,
we don't look like we're haphazard here
yeah.
first. Okay, we were talking about mental issues and the awareness, and what I was saying was we went from letting those with disabilities and those with mental illness be included. They were included with family functions, they were
Mhm,
included in everything except learning.
mhm,
We would separate them because of course you can't hold up the rest of the class
mhm.
because you got 3 or 4 kids that are behind.
Yeah.
So the classrooms would take the 3 or 4, put them
Mhm,
in another spot, have a special teacher, have
mhm.
someone to work with them so that you could bring them up to speed. And if they were able to get up to speed, they would
Yeah,
mainstream them back into the classroom.
yeah.
absolutely.
The problem now is that, and this is all my point, audience, please don't come down on the program because of it. This is just my point because, as you well know, I worked in corrections. And a lot of times they didn't get that communication, that one-on-one, hey, calm down. Hey, you can't do this, until they became adults.
Yeah.
Now you're in a lockdown situation where you can't do anything but listen. And now it becomes a thing of you're treating them badly. The communication has to be there. The communication has to be, and we left off the communication.
Oh yeah.
Because they were kids.
Right.
Because the family worked. Because they couldn't pay the medical. Because they couldn't get a coach or they couldn't get a therapist. The kid loses out. The kid loses out. So we are so happy that we now have someone that's on that can actually talk to that kind of stuff.
Because we started out about life coaching.
No, it's good. But I heard a lot of the conversation while I was trying to solve the issues with my MacBook.
Right.
And you know, and it was a lot of good conversations. So first of all, I just want to thank you all for having me on the show. I'm excited about what we're about to talk about. And I'm ready to dive in whenever you are.
Let me do the proper, because we treat everybody the proper way.
Thank you.
So the thing is, I don't want you to think that we understand. Okay, this is not one of those where they're gonna kick us off the station because we didn't do it the right way.
Oh yeah,
anything like that. This is our stuff, and we do it our way, regardless if it looks right or it don't look right. This is us. Okay, because life be lifing.
Right,
life
you know what?
Yeah.
And I feel that I'm being left out, so I'm gonna put my glasses on.
You gonna put
come on now. Yeah, you gotta fit. You gotta fit.
Yes,
put your glasses on. So the very first thing, like I said, we do run over sometimes, so we do have a little bit of time that we can go over. And what we don't get, Daymond, we'll just invite you back.
Yes,
you know, it ain't a big deal to us.
We're about to talk about.
We'll just invite you back.
I'm excited. We're talking about some good
positive
stuff. So we can go on and on and on. So you know, I'm excited.
Right. Yeah. So let's do the first thing first, which is when our guests come on, we don't embarrass ourselves or them by introducing them. We allow them to introduce themselves. So, Mr. Lavine.
Okay, so take down the banner first. Take down the banner first.
Who are you? And we know that it is not a mental awareness issue. We know that. So who is Daymond Lavine?
I would just like to start off by saying I am the pluripreneur. That is how I brand myself. So I thank you. I saw all the promo. I thank you so much for, giving some awareness around the fact that I am also a coach and I'm also an author. But, aside from that, I brand myself as the pluripreneur. I love helping people. I always have. So just to give you some background, I'm a systems engineer by day, but by night, I moonlight as, a brand designer, a graphic designer, a coach, a broker, an author. And I got tired of saying all of that, right? So
you just use pluripreneur.
I love it. Pluripreneur. I love it.
And that is.
And you know what? You know what I love about that? What I love about that is when I saw it, I was like, that's not really okay. That's not really, but okay. Because the thing about it is, if we are actually doing what we need to do with some people, okay, we are pluripreneurs.
Yeah, most of us
we can't bring some of the people that we meet in our business together, and leave them hanging. On what they don't know. So we have to learn some of the stuff that they don't know.
Oh my
so
God.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that you do more than one. So if I come to you and I look for a certain thing, you may very well tell me, well, you know what? You might need to sit down with a pen and pad and write your own self-help book.
Well, did you read my life story?
You know what? I had the pleasure of meeting Daymond in person.
Yeah.
Pleasure. However, I just want to know who crafted, and I do mean craft, your bio, because I was like, baby.
Well, listen, I can't call myself a brander if I'm not doing it perfectly myself.
Okay,
Yes.
that's what I was.
Yes.
How can I present that if I'm not doing it, right? So like everything you see coming out of this engine called Pluripreneur and Daymond and Company, it is me. But honestly, Nanette, I need to take a step back to something that you said because I think that's profound. And I hope you all embrace both the positive and the negative, because I think if we're going to educate people, we got to be just completely transparent and say, this came out of some goodness and it also came out of some badness.
Yes.
The reason why I said, did you read my life story, is because that is exactly what happened to me. I found myself going through a lot of things in life. I found myself trying to start business, but when I looked around, people who said they were going to be there, they were not. I had to keep going. And so that's what happened. I'm a person that tries not to limit myself. So the reason why you see me having a lot of these things in my wheelhouse is because I believe people should not limit themselves. We're capable of a lot of different things, honestly, an infinite amount of things, right? But we have to embrace that. And that's what I try to do, even if people come along or not. I have to follow what's in my heart. I have to follow what God tells me to do, and then just keep moving. And so
Well,
that's
now,
how a lot of it came along.
Would you say that is the spirit of winning, learning, and excelling?
I think it's all of that, but also embracing what you're weak at and trying to turn that into a strength.
Right, because and that's what I mean by the winning. That's what I mean. When you step on something and you find out you're winning, you got to learn from it.
Yeah, you do.
And then excel with it.
Absolutely.
A lot of people look at it and say, well, I won that, so now I'm going to move on. No,
Yes.
that becomes your tag hold. That becomes what you hold on to. If I learned how to use the keyboard on a laptop, when I get ready to go into, say, a studio, and even though the keys may look different, I know how to function with a laptop.
Absolutely.
So now I get the next thing.
Yeah.
I'm on the next. That's the only way we can climb these stairs to success.
Absolutely. And with me being in the field of now coaching, because you have to understand, I started doing coaching relatively later, maybe about like 5 or 6 years ago. And I stepped into that because I found myself trying to be a source of inspiration, telling people how they can do some of the things that I do. That's why it turned into coaching. I was already doing it, doing so many things, right? At some point, people start asking you, well, how are you doing this, right? But our contractual work was scoped to a specific project, right? So I quickly learned, okay, I have to carve out something called coaching and mentoring and add that to my business so that I can help people. But at the end of the day, I think we need to be working, trying to motivate and inspire people, because that's just the state of America today. I mean, we can't move away from that. And those of us who have those types of gifts should be willing to share them.
Well, not only that, the thing about it too is we're gonna, and I don't want to say it negatively. Audience, hear me out first. Hear me out. I'm not trying to say it negatively, but there's going to be so much defeatist attitude.
Yes.
And some of the things that are going on, what you used to be able to do, someone is now telling you, oh, you no longer do it that way.
Yes.
And if we just take it with the simplest thing, I heard someone the other day say, well, I got to cancel my vacation. And we were, well, why? Well, I don't have that new ID. So I have to cancel. Well, no, you don't have to cancel. You just have to go get the new ID. Well, I don't have time to go get the new ID. So they're already backtracking what they can do and want to do
Mm-hmm.
to something that they're, well, I really don't have time to do. We
Mm-hmm.
can't become a defeatist mind.
And
We
I'm so
cannot.
glad you're highlighting that. I
Mm-hmm.
am so glad you're highlighting that, because do you know how many times I encounter statements like that
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
when I'm with a person and I'm
Mm-hmm.
coaching them?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I wonder sometimes, are we just trained to do that in society now? Like the first
Mhm.
little obstacle we come to, are
Mm-hmm.
we just trained to not move forward so that we can be controlled
Mhm.
by somebody else?
Or
Yeah.
that we want to pay somebody else to lead us on
Yeah,
the way, and it's
yeah,
something you can do.
yeah,
You don't need a
Mm-hmm.
leader if you can maneuver it yourself.
Yeah.
absolutely.
But
You don't need.
doesn't it come down to like the core of something that you really want to do, or something that you are going along because someone is kind of like said, oh, you know, kind of maybe pushing you in that direction, and it's not really because I think that's where that comes from more so is your core. Do you want it or do you don't want it? You know, like.
Or is it that you're not searching deep enough within you?
I tend to gravitate to that, and I can only the reason why I'm saying that, I can speak from my perspective.
Mhm.
I have spent a long time, you know, searching inside myself to find out who I am,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so I know how much work that takes. And
Mhm.
what I have noticed is that I think a lot of people are just not willing to put in that work
Mm-mm.
anymore.
Mm-mm.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, they'd rather have it be said that I tell Felice what she's good at. I
absolutely.
tell Felice what
Hmm.
she can do. I
Mhm.
Yep.
tell Felice, and then Felice gravitates to it because I've already co-signed it.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's
Right.
already been approved. It's
Mhm.
Yep.
already, it's not something where Felice would come to me and say, hey, I think I'm going to open a bakery.
Yeah.
And then I say to her, well, nobody's going to come and eat your cake.
Hmm.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's not going to gravitate to that and say,
Mhm.
well, it doesn't matter if nobody comes. I
Right.
Mhm.
just need anybody to come.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
It
Yeah.
doesn't matter about nobody.
Mhm.
Nobody
Nobody is
doesn't have,
invited, but anybody can
they're
come
not
on in there.
invited because
Yeah.
anybody is
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You got to have that mindset
Mhm.
that you don't need a co-signer
Mhm.
Right.
to say
But
who you
but
are.
that's so hard, isn't it? Especially when we as
Yes.
children are typically not trained that way.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. That's
You
true.
know? And
Yeah.
so it comes down, that's why I like a lot of conversations that I even have with people who have kids, right?
Mhm.
Because I can even, you know, sit down with them and say, if this is something that you're noticing in your child, you know, think about maybe stating it this way, or think about your experience when you were
Mhm.
a child, right? What did
Mhm.
that feel
Mhm.
like, and how do you want that to feel
Mhm.
differently for your children?
Yeah.
And
You
not
know,
only that, if we
yeah,
opened up a field for our children to explore,
yeah,
and we're looking at the same field, but we closed it off for us.
Mhm.
yeah.
You know
Yeah,
what I mean? It should
Yeah.
yeah,
it should be open for us
Mhm.
to explore as well. And
yeah.
then if you said to a child, well, this is a flower, and the
Mhm.
child said, huh, and you gave them the flower and said, smell. This is
Mhm.
how the flower smells. And we're giving them all the elements of the beauty of this flower.
Mhm.
Yet we're not interested in
Yeah.
exploring it on our own.
Yeah.
We're waiting for someone else to pick it, someone else to
Mhm.
smell it, someone
Mhm.
else to say it's okay, someone else to do that. And how much do you think that social media played into that?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Woo. Every last bit of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it's not just social media. I think it all started with television, to be
Mhm.
honest with you.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
You know,
yes,
social media
yes.
is only an extension of television. I was
Yeah.
just having a conversation with one of my coworkers. You know, we confided in one another, and
Mhm.
we
Uh-huh.
had this same conversation. She was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, these kids, you know, they're terrible today." And I
Yeah.
said, "Yeah, you know, it started
Mhm.
with television. The reason why you go to a dance and you chaperone a party and you see some of these kids doing some of the stuff they saw on
Mhm.
television is because
Right.
Mhm.
that's where they saw it,
Yeah.
right?"
Well, not only
Yeah.
that, the thing is,
Yeah.
I remember, in the beginning when you got the cable and you got the pay-per-view and
Mhm.
you got
Yes.
all this other
Yeah.
stuff, and people would ask me, it
Mhm.
was so funny because Felice knows how I am. It's like, huh? What?
Yeah.
Who does that in America,
Mhm.
or my America? Because
Mhm.
I'm not understanding. They would
Mhm.
ask, well, when did you decide to put parental locks on your television?
Mhm.
Parental control.
Yeah.
I had to ask them, where is that at?
Yeah, yeah,
Where's that button even at?
Yeah.
Because if
Mhm.
I told my child that I don't want you watching this, or I
Mhm.
don't want you turning to this channel,
Mhm.
there was no doubt that
Mhm.
that channel was not going to be turned on. And you can
yeah,
look, you can check, and
hmm,
are you doing what you're supposed to
Mhm.
do as a parent?
yeah,
Mhm.
Yes, you give
Yeah.
them the field to explore.
Mhm.
Are you helping them explore it?
Right.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
So
what
they checked out. I think
that,
you're pointing out that some of the parents have checked out, and
yeah.
imagine how worse that is with social media now, because that's at
Mm-hmm.
their fingertips now.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if you've checked out, you
Yeah.
missed a lot.
Right.
Right,
You know,
right, right,
yeah.
right.
So
And
social media plays a lot into it. And I think social media is actually the worst if you're not, controlling who you are as a person and monitoring what you're doing with it.
Mhm.
I think it's terrible because it separates us.
Yeah.
Right,
For
You
right,
can
sure.
go out
right.
in the street right now and see how many people are walking down the street looking at their phone.
Yeah.
They're not even
Yes,
looking
And
in
won't
front
even
yes.
of
look
them
up. Right.
anymore. They're
Right.
looking at their phone.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it has really, I think, destroyed the fabric of us like coming together
Mhm.
as
Mhm.
people and community.
Yeah.
But I think when we, have platforms like this, we're having conversations. I mean, this is a prime example of, I think, more things that we need to do. Things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna throw in my biblical references to this, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like right now, the social media and the way the access is, it's harkening back to Adam and Eve and
Mhm.
knowing that there's the tree of life, the good and evil, knowledge of good and evil is sitting right there. But
Yes.
until you took that fruit, you didn't know until you're on your
Mhm.
track, and you if parents got back to parenting
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
parenting
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
even
Yeah.
more, even in my day and age, your certain parents would send you off to church to Bible or the vacation Bible school, but they would never darken the church, right?
Hmm.
They would
Right,
send you off
right,
there,
right.
because they, and and this just came to me because they know typically that there will be some good caretaking within the church
Within the church.
community.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, they would never darken the church. Maybe on Easter, maybe when the child is, has a
But
program.
to your
Hmm.
point though,
Hmm.
if we know that planting a seed
Hmm.
will grow a tree,
Hmm.
Hmm.
and we know that tree will bear fruit,
Yeah.
Hmm.
it doesn't matter that I'm the one that's picking the fruit from the tree. I
Hmm.
just know that I need to plant that seed.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I
need
agree with that. I do agree with that. But
Yeah.
here's the thing: it's like okay, be a little graphic. A seed was planted in you; it grew into a baby, but then you've disconnected yourself
Yes.
from
Yes.
that. From
Yes.
that. So even to the point of having the knowledge that you plant a seed, it grows a tree. Anymore in our society, what do? And I'm sorry, Damon, but we
Oh, no, you good.
engineer stuff to
Yeah.
where it's no longer natural and organic. It is
Yeah.
Well,
now.
not only that, my point was that I planted one.
Hmm.
I didn't
Hmm.
think about having a harvest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
I only planted one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in the community
Hmm.
where my one tree
Hmm.
has to reflect
Hmm.
to everyone else and
Yeah.
what's growing around them. Because
Right.
if there were weeds around my garden,
Hmm.
I'm going to make sure that I tend to my garden.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm not tending to my one flower that I put
Yeah.
in that garden.
Right.
I'm
Right.
tending to the entire garden. It's
Yeah.
Hmm.
the village concept turned
Yeah.
around, that
Yeah.
we
Hmm.
no longer look at the fact that there's a village concept. I had to tell a
No.
parent, and Damon,
No.
you would understand this.
Yeah.
I had to tell a parent. I had to explain to a parent who didn't want their kid for some reason to watch. I think it was one of the back in what was the thing with Kadeem Hardison, and they were in school, different world.
Oh,
Different
different. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't want, and I'm going back. Yes,
Oh no, it's
audience, I'm
fine.
old. Yes, I'm going back. But the
I
thing
don't know
about
what
it,
you're talking about. No.
the thing about it was, it was a regular sitcom.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Because we don't even have those on now. The ones that we have
No, we
on now, you
don't.
look at
No.
you say, well, none of that reflects who we are,
Yeah.
unless you go to BET and you go to the Black networks, and then even those are older. They're
Mhm.
not what's going on today for our
Right.
kids to really relate to.
Mhm.
And this one parent said, well, and we were in boys and girls club, and she was like, well, I really don't want my kids in the rec room between such and such time and such a time because they're watching the Cosbys and Martin and, whatever is on at that time.
Wow. Okay.
And I said to her, well, you need to express that to them because I'm
Right.
dealing with 100 and some odd kids. There's no way in the world I'm just going to pluck them out and make it seem like they're on punishment or they're, something is wrong. So you express that to them. There's other areas that they can go to, that things are
Right.
going on. And then it dawned on me, she's not understanding it. I said, so you take them out of the class where they don't watch it tonight,
Yeah.
but they go to school tomorrow. Those same kids. Think they're not talking about what was on TV tonight?
Right.
But what baffles me is that was actually positive television.
Well, yeah, and anymore, and right now that was the other point about this whole thing about social media and the knowledge of good and evil is that even the children's programming now that's designated as children's programming is horrible.
Oh,
and it's over their heads.
Horrible.
Yes. Well,
it's over
first of
their
all,
heads.
a lot of that programming is honestly back in the day would be rated R.
Yes,
right now.
exactly.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, and to my point, this is why my friend who's a parent was explaining to me, and I'm not going to go into that detail, but when she was explaining to me what the kids were doing on the table, I was like, yeah, because they probably saw it on Netflix.
Yes,
exactly. Exactly.
Or YouTube, or whatever.
Well, not only that, I had a nephew who, we're talking about community and we're talking about the fact that what coaches have to go through to try to connect where the missing link is. Okay, you got one kid who's over the top.
Yeah.
You got one kid that kind of wants to know what that other kid is doing, but they don't really know what that kid is doing because they've never been exposed to it.
Yeah.
And then you got the other kid that totally has no clue. Never seen it, don't know about it, has no idea. But you're saying, we're going to have this teacher, Miss Marion, who has never done anything other than teach math, English, history, and everything else. We're going to have her teach this type of environment where it's sexual, where it's religion, where it's communication between races, where it's about protecting yourself when you're at home alone with mommy. We're taking the teacher and turning her into this coach where that needs to be done with family.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love the fact that you're having this conversation. I actually think a lot of those teachers probably need some therapeutic help as well, right?
Right. Exactly. That mental health thing. And let's tell you, I was just with a group of teachers on Sunday, and and again, gone are the days where it's
simple.
Yeah, I love my job. I love the kids that I'm with. But all they have are horror stories anymore. And it's really sad. My hat goes off to any educator.
Me too. My mom was an educator.
I tell them, just like when I find somebody that's in the service, in the military, thank you for your service, because literally, that one, I could not be a teacher. In the sense of in the public or even in the private schools. It's horrible. Unfortunately.
So now, does that reflect on what you do with your community action group?
Well, you know what? That's a really good question. Thank you for bringing that up. I really want to talk to it from the perspective of what you were saying, Annette, about we're missing community. And I want to tie this to my brand as well. A lot of things that I do, I really do it honestly from the bottom of my heart. And thank God, God gives me the power to do a lot of it as well. But when I came into this area, Oak Cliff, I saw a gap. And I want to use Oak Cliff.
Yeah, because that's where I am right now. That's my hood.
Right. I want to use this as an example of things that I think we can do. What I do with the community action group is I pull people around me. It's a village. I pull my neighbors together with me. I've met a couple of developers in the area who are building things, and people that look like me. Our voices get lost in translation, so I want to be
Right,
there
right.
and make sure that we're influencing some of that as well. So what I do with the community action group is pull a community together. I start with my immediate sphere of influence, but again, I'm serving as an example. I'm hoping people follow suit so that that scales. I would love to see other people start community action groups in neighborhoods
Yes,
like
yes.
mine
And not
so
so
that it
much,
scales.
not so much the ones that that we see all the time. I'm like fearful of it because in New
Yeah,
Jersey, you lived in a neighborhood,
yeah, yeah.
and it was not controlled by a HOA.
Right,
You
right. Yeah, we don't
you
have that.
lived in a neighborhood. If something went on, people didn't have to be told to watch well, they're on
Absolutely,
vacation, we're gonna watch their house. People didn't
absolutely.
get, people weren't told you gotta clean up your yard because people
Mhm.
were concerned about the way their yard looked. So
Yeah.
you didn't have to worry about that kind of stuff where the HOA said, well, every house should be yellow.
Mhm.
We didn't have to do that kind of stuff. It was community.
I love
You
your example.
you know, you
Yeah.
that,
Well,
that we made it. That's not community when you got people telling you that this is what it is. Community
excellent.
is just watching. I remember moving into our first home, and when we bought our home, my son inadvertently kicked his ball over the fence.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, well, that's in the neighbor's yard.
Mhm.
Go
Mhm.
knock on the door, introduce yourself, and go get your ball.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
his thing was, you're not going to go get the ball. No, indeed.
No.
I didn't kick the ball.
Yeah.
You know,
Go
and
introduce
of
yourself.
course, that automatically makes the
Yeah.
neighbor knows the kid next door.
Yeah.
Now he understands there's a little boy next door. The ball may come over here, that kind of stuff. I'm
Yeah.
not going to be going back and forth over in this man's yard, and
Right.
neither is your father. So
Mhm.
you need to go and introduce yourself, just like we'll have to introduce ourselves. Let him meet you first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let him get to know that you are the young man. Community,
Community.
Yeah.
you
Community.
know. Get to know your neighbor, get to
Yeah.
know, what they have. And I think that especially when you say action group,
Yes.
there should be action in the community.
So every
Absolutely.
meeting, we leave that meeting with action items.
Okay, I love it. So
Love
yes,
it.
We leave that meeting with action items, and I'm pretty adamant about, if we get into a meeting and there's some spirited discussion about something that should change or some concern, I'm like, that's great. Thank you for pointing out that concern. Now, how can we have a solution
yes.
identified
Right,
for
right,
that
right,
concern that you
So
have?
you don't have just a gripe session, you have, an action plan.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And know that we're going to have an action plan. I
Absolutely.
love going to the meeting,
Yeah.
knowing we have the meeting, great.
Yeah.
Knowing that people are concerned, great.
Right.
Yeah.
But knowing that there's going to be a solution to the problem, it's not going to be just tabled.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there's no reason to bring up a problem and chew on the problem if
No.
you're not trying to work towards a solution.
Exactly.
No.
Exactly. And I think if communities did that more often, some of the things that are going on
Yeah.
would be minimized. Not to
So
say
can
that
we
they
talk
would be
about
gone.
that? Some of the things that are going on. I don't know how far y'all want to take the show, but I'm sitting up here. I'm a black man, and that means that I'm really passionate about some issues. But I think when we touch on that, one of the problems I'm trying to solve as well is we need to have an action group. And a lot of the situations that we as a Black community are going through, we have to have an action plan behind solving a lot of those problems, right?
And
Yeah.
understanding, because I'm from law enforcement,
Yeah.
and in New Jersey, which I didn't know
Yeah.
until it happened to me as a trainer. And I'm trying to train these officers to come in and be officers. And
Yeah.
what people don't understand is inside the jail,
Yeah.
you don't have a gun.
Mhm.
Most jails don't have the nightstick.
Okay.
Most jails don't have, the big heavy radio where you can bash somebody in the head. Your biggest weapon is an ink pen.
Oh my goodness, I'm learning
So
something new.
you're not going in there to, and this is like I said in New Jersey corrections, you
Okay.
are not going in there with weapons.
Mm.
And the
Wow.
reason you're not going in there with weapons is because if you lose the weapon, guess who
Right.
has the weapon?
That's right.
So,
Oh,
so you're
yeah.
not going in with weapons. So the
Okay.
biggest weapon is your communication.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You have to learn to communicate. You
Yeah.
have to learn
Yeah.
how to talk to people, and you have
Okay.
to learn how to do it. So now in the training classes, like you said, in the community,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea that the state of New Jersey had 3 different types of people.
Mm.
I mean, when you come north to south or
Mm-hmm.
north to west, you
Mm-hmm.
expect different types of people because
Mm-hmm.
you're crossing borders.
Yeah.
But when you're
Yeah.
in the same state
Mm-hmm.
and these people think this way, and these people think this way, and then
Mm-hmm.
these people think this way,
Mm-hmm.
I was totally outdone. And it was all toward the black males.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Really?
I was really outdone. I had to redo PowerPoints and lesson
Yeah.
plans and different things to bring up to them, we are one society.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How do
Yeah.
you get this ideology
Mm-hmm.
that you treat them this way in the north and you treat them this way in central Jersey and you treat them
Wow.
this way? First off, we're talking about young men,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then we're going with laws. Why
Yeah.
are you ignoring the
Yeah.
law? You
Mm-hmm.
know, that's a law. You can't
Mhm.
ignore that.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
you getting ready to be a cop. You can't ignore that.
No. No.
So I understand exactly what you're saying, that there needs to be something that says, hey, we need to bar down on our communication first
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
amongst the community,
Mhm.
our communication with those that are supposed to protect the community,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
those that are supposed to teach the community,
Mhm.
and those that are supposed to keep our community healthy.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about
That's where
relationship building too. It's
Mm-hmm.
a
that's
lot, it's a lot of relationship building. And you see how this whole conversation is really connected. I mean, we talked in this conversation about how society is breaking down, how we don't have the right, communication, how social media plays into that. And I think some people just need to stand up. I know it takes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But some people just need to stand up and operate within the parameters of things that they can do and
Mm-hmm.
volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
Volunteer
exactly
for some of this
exactly
in the nature of
what they
community
have.
building. Yeah,
Well,
Community building.
yeah.
And
And what
well,
so what are like the 2 things right now that you're working on solutions for in the
in Brentwood,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
one of the major issues that we were facing right now is that there's a lot of gentrification here.
mhm,
When I came into the area, and I granted, I was one of the people who came in and built one of the contemporary homes. But when I came into the area, I also wanted to be conscious of what I was doing and what else was happening around me,
mhm.
Yeah.
right?
So
Mm-hmm.
So
you wanted it to be an inclusion. Mhm,
inclusion,
Yeah.
inclusion, because
Mm-hmm.
society is evolving.
Yeah.
There is nothing we can do to
Yeah.
stop society from evolving.
Right.
But
mhm,
what we need to do is form the relationships with everybody around us so
Mm-hmm.
that all of the players, all of the stakeholders can
Mm-hmm.
have a voice.
Yeah.
There's a couple of developments going on, and I'm pointing this way because I'm in my home office, but
mhm,
there's a couple of developments happening around the corner from me. And guess what? We have a major voice in that because I met that developer. I
Mm-hmm.
pulled people together around me. We
Mm-hmm.
rallied around the fact that his first development was not going to be conducive to the neighborhood. And so
Right.
now our voices were laid into that so that he
Mm-hmm.
can turn a multi-family
Mm-hmm.
development into townhomes, which are really more conducive.
Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
do we get out of that? We
Mm-hmm.
get a higher volume of
Mm-hmm.
people living in the community, which means that we're going to have more dollars coming into the community for infrastructure development,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Another development that's going to be happening is one at the train station right up the road as well. So we're already working with that developer to put some of our inputs into that. And
Mm-hmm.
in parallel with that, I have a relationship with code. You were mentioning earlier, we want to make sure our community is clean. We have some good headway working with our code person to clean up the area and add more safety. So that's
Yeah.
happening. And
Mhm.
also have a relationship with the police department,
Mhm.
the community action group. So everything really is around action, but
Mhm.
also being a part of the change, which I think is different.
Yeah,
Which I
Okay,
think,
absolutely.
well,
yeah,
I am so interested in this. So I'm going to make this open statement, and Felice will just have to go along with it because she's my partner in
yeah,
crime.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, she's going to have to just go along with it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And I don't want the audience to get antsy about well there's so much.
Yeah.
yeah,
So being that there is so much,
yeah.
I'm going to ask you, Mr. Levine, to give us some more of your time.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah,
We
and that's
we
that's
need
what
to
I'm here.
give more of your time, and I
I
don't
like the
want it to
positive
be.
vibes. I
I
like.
don't want it to be a pre-recorded time. I
Mhm.
Okay.
want it to be another live session.
Oh, fine. Yeah,
So I want to get back to you, but I want to tell the audience, unfortunately, they only give a certain amount of time,
yeah.
and then they're going to cut off
Yeah. It's
the
wild.
recording. So we're going to
Mhm.
end here.
Mhm.
But when you see the flyer that says Daymond Lavine,
Yeah.
part two, that's when you are going to be instructed to tune back in
Mhm.
so that we can get finished with what has become not only a enlightening
Mhm.
discussion, but a discussion worthy of our next as a group of people,
Oh,
as
yeah.
a
Yeah.
community.
Yeah. I love that.
So I'm gonna tell us to wave bye. Mr.
Mhm.
Levine, I want you to just stand by so that we
Yeah.
can,
Yeah. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
can get that going.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I'm going to quickly give out, let's do this. I want to do this first. Um, if you need to just get in touch with him, there's his Instagram connection,
Mhm.
there's his Facebook connection,
Yeah, right?
here's
Yep.
his
That's right.
TikTok connection,
Yep.
Mhm.
and his Gmail. So you can get
Thank
little
you.
tidbits
Look at you. She's so
Yeah.
good.
Thank you.
until we come back, because we're definitely going to invite him back, and it will
Mhm.
be within the next week or so because we do have other people scheduled.
Oh,
But we
yeah.
want to invite him back, and we don't want it to be a pre-recording. We
Yes.
want it to be live.
Mhm.
So we're going to say goodnight. Thank you for standing by. I know we're way over. We're way over, and they're going to cut us off, but I don't care. But
Yeah.
anyway, I'm going to say goodnight. I'm going to say goodnight. And we will get back with Mr. Daymond Lavine. Thank you so much.
Yay.
Thank you so
All
much.
right.